Welcome to Tripping Over the Ottoman. I'm David Van Deusen here with my co-host, Abby.
And David and I are two superfans from different generations that take a deep dive into episodes of the one thing that unites us.
And that is the Dick Van Dyke Show.
And today we'll be having a special holiday edition.
Wait. Sound effects, please. Don't you just love those Christmas bells?
Beautiful. Perfect. Well, today is a special holiday edition of Tripping Over the Ottoman as David and I reminisce with you about the Dick Van Dyke Show Christmas episode entitled The Alan Brady Show Presents.
And this show is an absolute fan favorite of fans of the show. And so many people discuss the fact that it's not really Christmas until they've watched the episode again this year, even though they've seen it how many times in the past.
Absolutely. When I was a kid, that just played in the background of our Christmas every year. So definitely a favorite.
I can remember being up late on Christmas Eve wrapping presents for the family, for the kids, and it would be 11:30 at night and on would come the show. And I think, I don't know how many presents I wrapped in that half hour because I was back glued watching the episode.
That's great.
The Alan Brady Show Presents is season 3, episode 13, written by our guys, Sam Denoff and Bill Persky. And actually, the idea of a Christmas episode featuring the members of the Alan Brady Show originated from the previous experiences that Sam and Bill had when they worked on the Andy Williams Show, where Andy Williams would join with his family and friends to celebrate the holidays through conversations and song. It's interesting that it was the Andy Williams that gave them their inspiration, but in the script, it
Perry
mentions the Perry Como Show.
Yeah. I was just gonna say that it's interesting. They mentioned that a couple of times, I think, in this, or it was in the script too, I think. And also, we should mention that Bill and Sam are the writers and producers of the original music and lyrics to the songs in this episode, which is very cool.
And there's a number of them which we'll talk about as we have our discussion here. Written back in October of 1963, October 28th. Interestingly, Carl was sort of lukewarm to the whole idea of a Christmas episode.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But Sam and Bill convinced Carl that if they did one this year, next year we could repeat it at holiday time and the following year. So that would give a little bit of a breather to Carl and then the folks.
Did they ever rerun it?
They did. So that became like a filler during the Christmas break.
I have a little synopsis, unless you have more details.
Go right ahead.
I have one. Alan's annual Christmas show is airing. He has had many critics state that what his Christmas show lacks is heart. Alan rejects the funny script Rob, Buddy, and Sally submit in favor of an idea he believes has heart. He'll have his staff, who entertain at many of his social functions, be the headliners of the show.
Oh, my synopsis that I found was it's the first Christmas presentation of the Alan Brady Show, where he turns the spotlight upon his talented staff to entertain the TV public.
Well put.
And I have one other one that is Mel Cooley convinces Alan Brady to pass on the Christmas script the writing staff submitted in favor of a variety show. Sally, Buddy, Rob, Laura, and Richie all do their best for Alan Brady Presents.
That's a cute one. Up front, one thing I want to mention is this is the only Christmas episode there is of the entire Dick Van Dyke Show, and really the only holiday episode. There's some fans, we watch it on, Halloween. There's Ghost of H. Hans and, some other ones. But there really are no mentions of Thanksgiving or Halloween or, Hanukkah, Christmas, anything like that. On the other hand, it's an interesting one. It's a very novel kind of Christmas episode. I have my own thoughts. Maybe you can chime in on this, David, but I'm a big sitcom fan. And, most sitcoms have had a Christmas episode. And I would say typically they're kind of phoned in, as I would call it. They're usually a rehash of like the Charles Dickens Christmas Carol kind of thing, or there's some other story kind of recycled. And that's probably, I assume, to, like you said, give the writers a break, give the cast a break or whatever, kind of do an easy script or something like that. But I would say this one is one that a lot of people that don't like the other Christmas episodes of sitcoms watch because it is so novel and interesting. Now, we don't have the Petries at home at Christmas, which one would imagine would happen. It's a whole different take on it. And I just think it's so novel and interesting.
We do see the Christmas tree in the office in the beginning. So we do have a hint of that. And we'll talk about that opening scene in a minute because there's some interesting revelations that Abby and I are going to share with you today, since we got a very early draft of what this episode was intended to be. And we'll tell you, fans, it's very different than what the final version ended up being. So you'll be intrigued to learn about those things. As I said, originally written in October, revised the early part of November, and filmed on November 12th of 1963. It's important to remember where we were in terms of our country's history at that point, because this episode was filmed just a few days before President Kennedy ended up being assassinated in Dallas. And then the episode aired, of course, in December, just a week before Christmas. We'll talk about how the events of history actually altered some of the content of the episode.
Yes, that'll be very interesting.
Also directed by Jerry Paris,
who's unfortunately not in the episode.
He is not, except for his voice.
Yes, that is true. That is true.
So Jerry announces the opening of the show and the arrival of Buddy in a package for Sally Rogers and things like that.
Now, also interesting, as the scene opened, the first scene of the show, we actually never seen even a filming of the Alan Brady Show up until now. We see some rehearsals, or they're alluded to. Even the rehearsals we saw, they were in a hotel room. We saw the commercial that Richie and Freddie rehearsed, but that's not really the Alan Brady Show stage, you know. A couple other things, but we really don't. We just, they allude to it a lot more than we've ever seen it, which is kind of fun because you get to imagine it, what it looks like. But here we're finally getting to see, oh, this is what it would be like on that Friday night when the show aired. And I just think it's so fun.
We've had debates through the years with fans about what night of the week was the Alan Brady Show on, you know, when and what time was it on, and was it live?
On kind of late, probably, right? Because isn't Richie always sort of like staying up to watch it, you know? It's funny. I love that that's an ongoing debate.
We do have a hint from the 44 Tickets episode where, of course, again, we didn't see the show, but everybody's gathering to PTA is gathering to see the show,
and you can see the poster for the show, and
the poster behind says 8:30 is when the show was that night.
Okay.
So it doesn't still tell us what night of the week, but
boy, Richie's got an early bedtime.
Yeah. I think what's also kind of fun with this episode is, along with the main cast members, we have the addition of two children that we can mention who had roles. One was Cornell Choulet. Cornell was the daughter of assistant director John Choulet and joined Santa and Larry and some other children sitting on Santa's throne. Cornell was in other episodes as well.
The birthday one, right? She goes in the audience.
The birthday episode. She was a dancer in the Talented Neighborhood, sitting next to Barry Van Dyke on the couch in the office. So Cornell has some fond memories of being on the show. But we also have another little boy sitting there with Larry and Cornell, and his name was Brendan Freeman. You'll notice him sitting right in the front. And he was the child of a family who were actually neighbors with Jerry Paris's family.
Oh, how sweet.
Jerry said, you know, we're going to do the show. We need a kid. And Brendan came. Brendan might have also later been in the birthday episode, too.
Probably. They needed a lot of kids for that one. So,
given that this is sort of a family show, I find it ironic that no Frank Adamo.
You know, I was looking for him. I thought, oh, I must have missed him. You know, he's got to be in here. And there was even probably a part, there was in the Robin Laura Santa scene, you know, where they're singing their Santa duet. There's people that come and drop change. And I thought, geez, you could have even just saw him there coming to drop some change in the chimneys, you know, but I didn't see him in there either. So I was very, very bummed about that.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
So we could speculate. Was Frank not there that week for some reason? Yeah. Certainly, if he was there, you would have thought he would have been in the sleigh at the end, or he would have.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Even the cutaway to the commercial in the very beginning. There was a technician that could have been
with
Frank.
The headphones on. Yep, that could have been him. Yeah.
Sort of crazy that you don't see Frank.
Yeah. Now we do see Abdul, right?
Abdullah Abbas. He's one of the guys that does drop change into the Santa scene.
Yep.
You know, we'll start to talk about some of the details here, but this is, again, one of the episodes not filmed in front of a live audience.
Yes.
Because of the complexity of the numbers. Was actually filmed over the course of 2 days. As we said earlier, Carl initially was sort of lukewarm, but finally came around. And once the episode started to take shape, he really embraced it.
That's cool.
There are a few rare color photos from this episode that you see every once in a while, and they're kind of fun to see.
Very, very vivid and cool.
The other thing that we have is the color home movies that Rosemarie's husband shot. So we have a couple little clips from the Christmas episode, it's a very brief snippet of the dance number with Dick and Mary, but
that's great though.
Kind of fun to see that as well.
Yeah. This episode takes couple breaks. It's a break from the normal format, but it's also a flashback, which I think is interesting. It's like such a strange format to begin with, and then you have the flashback on top of it, kind of makes it even more interesting. So it opens up. There's a title card that says that, the Alan Brady Show. Gary's doing the voiceover at this point, right?
Right.
He does his little voiceover, introduces it. The show starts, and Alan, dressed as Santa, comes out in a sleigh. And he actually, I didn't know this, he's not listed in the cast credits at all, Carl. They're considering it still covered by the beard. Kind of, they hadn't shown his face yet on the show. So it's still covered by the beard. So they did not put his name in the credits as being in the show, which I thought was very interesting. But yeah, so he comes out, he's got the big beard on in the sleigh. The sleigh girls, they ride out together. And actually, in the original script, he's sitting on a throne to start, it said. And then he comes and does some sort of, comedic dance steps with the sleigh girls or something like that. And then, sits down. But thought that was an interesting switch.
And initially, his remarks are quite brief in this episode, that the filmed episode that we see. But actually, he had quite a few lines. And I'll just share some of those because it's very interesting to me. So Carl as Brady, as Santa, says, "Ho, ho, ho. Boy, am I hot in this suit." As you know, we get lots of mail on this show, most of it from people who like me, some of it from people who hate my guts. So for those people tonight, we're going to have a special show with very little of me on it. And when I am on, I'll be seen this way. Apparently the camera was supposed to go out of focus. And he says, "Don't adjust your set, folks. It's me that's out of focus." Now, to tell you all about the show, I'd like to introduce my producer. So here again is also a change, because in our filmed episode, Rob is the one who comes out, but originally it was supposed to be Mel.
Yeah, and when I'm thinking of it, I'm like, having Rob do it just cuts to the chase quicker, and I feel like that makes more sense. So I probably understand why they picked that in the end. But yeah, interesting that they had Mel doing it.
Rob comes out sheepishly, if you will, sort of nervous, trying to find his mark on the floor.
Dick does two things good. One is the phone, and one is this shtick, where he's the fumbling, nervous, like, where do I look? What am I doing? How am I speaking? And just a riot.
He does it beautifully, and
sputtering, and
someone's like giving him a cue from off stage.
That's the best part. He just embodies that so well.
Finally realizes we have to go to commercial. They return from commercial to have Rob sort of not realizing the camera's back on, and he's picking his teeth or pulling, food out of his mouth or something, when he begins to explain how the show will all play out tonight and how they came to be.
And we get an interesting take there where it's there's a gentleman who's wearing headphones in a room watching the screen and watching Rob on the screen, and sort of he's in the editing room or the camera change room or whatever. And it's interesting because I was talking to David before this, and I was saying that the show has a weird kind of meta sometimes, like at the beginning here, is this Dick Van Dyke acting like Rob Petrie and Rob Petrie's nervous? It's hard to believe because Rob's a performer, right? So, or are we to think this is Dick playing Rob and Rob's pretending to be nervous because that's his shtick? Either way, it's funny. And then also with the flashback coming up, that's also going to be another meta kind of thing where it's like, is the audience supposed to have seen that? Or is he telling it and then us, the audience at home, is seeing it? It's very interesting. It plays with that a lot. And it doesn't make any sort of solid argument for any of those. It's sort of gray area, which is really fun.
I agree with all those sentiments. Is this Dick? Is this Rob? Sort of like you're part of the family, I guess. Rob eventually explains how it went, again, by use of flashback, and we end up back with Rob and Buddy and Sally in the office. There's a Christmas tree decorating there,
which is so fun. We've never seen anything like that on the show.
No.
And just a little Merry Christmas sign in the window, and it's just fun.
Yeah, so let's talk about the Merry Christmas sign, which is backwards on the window, right? And I was thinking, who would be able to read those words so far up on whatever floor it was? Originally, we hear Buddy saying to the group, "Well, how do you like it?" And he has taken a can of snow and sprayed Merry Christmas on the window, not the cardboard sign that we ultimately see. So Rob says, "Well, it's backwards." And Buddy says, "Well, of course, it's not for us. It's for the people outside." Sally says, "Well, we're on the 20th floor, Buddy." And he said, "Well, I know, but what about the window washer? We can't forget him." And Rob says, "Oh, I'm glad you reminded me, the window washer." And Rob is compiling a gift list of the people that they need to get gifts for.
Just totally different start to the scene. Yeah, he's making a Christmas list. And then I think Sally is still doing the same thing. Sally's playing with the tree. Rob and Buddy I think they're just talking. about the show that they just wrote, the script they just finished. Alan's gonna love the show, that kind of a thing. And then Laura enters.
Yeah, there's like kicking at the
Yeah,
office door,
yeah,
and they're like, what is that?
yeah.
Buddy answers, and we see the huge stack of packages. And I love this line, a great line. That has to be Laura, or Santa Claus has the wildest legs I've ever seen, or something to
Because
that
they're just,
effect.
you can see her legs sticking out of the boxes.
And all Rob says is, "Oh boy, with all those packages, my wallet's certainly going to feel it."
It's interesting that they needed her there in the office to hear this news about this Christmas show, but they get her there by like, well, I guess she's shopping at lunch or something. You never see her there very often, but this one they needed her there, so that's how they wrote that in there. They're in there talking, and then Mel enters with the news it's going to kick off the rest of the show. And interestingly, when he enters, Buddy does not insult him. He says, okay, let's have it. Where is it? Where's your insult? And he says, never on the holidays. Like,
Welcome, Mel, and season's
greetings. That's right. So everyone's excited because Mel says, oh, Alan loved the script. Everyone's excited. Oh, great. We can, take off early. We can have the week off, etc. And he says, hang on, though. There's more. We're not going to use the script. And Buddy immediately recants his lack of insult. He starts going in on him.
In the draft of the original script, Rob sort of looks at Mel in disbelief that this great script that they wrote isn't going to be used. And Rob says, Mel, I'm sorry. I've never done this before. And he looks at Buddy and he says, let Mel have it. And Buddy's like, huh? And give him the rest of your stock. So again, a line that wasn't there, but right. Is really clever writing by this group. Buddy lets out and says, oh, why, you bald-headed partridge in a pear shape. You skin-headed Scrooge. If you stood under the mistletoe for a year, the best you'd ever get is a handshake from your own mother. I wish that stuff was left in.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Again, to show the change from Buddy's attitude of season's greetings, welcome, Mel, to ba-boom, the pear-headed, skin-headed Scrooge.
Mel says, hey, how old the show? Like, let me to explain. And he just tells them that what has Alan always been saying about the show? And they say, well, that it lacks, heart, that it lacks charm, warmth, that kind of thing. Because of that, he has this idea that they're going to do what I think Mel refers to, or maybe Rob says it, the Perry Como type show, where families of the show's crew and the cast, they kind of share themselves with the audience. In the original script, Mel says, and his gift to you, Alan said you could do anything you want. And Buddy says, gee whiz, a TV first, writer kills producer live. Which I thought was pretty good.
Looking around at each other, and Laura seems a little quiet. They said, well, what's the matter, Laura? She says, I don't know. You don't want to do it? She says, no. I don't know if I'll sing or dance or both. To which, Rob responds, well, we may have to call the show an evening with Laura Petrie.
Which is great, because we've seen that before in other episodes where she kind of lets her love of dance and song kind of, get the best of her there, and she wants kind of to be the spotlight. So that's pretty funny. They end the scene with, it's going to be called Alan Brady Show Presents. And Sally says something like, presents what? And I said, well, that's what we got to figure out between now and when the show goes on. That's the beginning. And then the rest of the show was on the soundstage of the Alan Brady Show.
It's a whole series of musical numbers that we as fans know so very well. And we start off with the anthem to Alan Brady, uniquely again written by Persky and Danoff.
Which involves all five of them, Laura, Buddy, Sally, Mel, and Rob, which is fun. Rob is the conductor. And we see here that while Rob was nervous before, he's great at performing. Maybe the sentiment there is, well, he's nervous when he just has to be himself, Rob, but then when he gets the material, he can pull it off. So we see that he's just hilarious. He does a little monologue to start, right? Davy Crockett in his cap.
Casey and his bat, which originally in the original script was Joe DiMaggio and his bat, not Casey.
And then Yankee Doodle and his dandy.
Yeah, John Brown and his body. Perfect opportunity for Dick to show some of his comedic side. Attempts to blow the pitch pipe.
Yep, like a harmonica, pretty much.
It blows like 5 notes, and then appears to take a bite off of it and blow a single note.
Which is a gag from, I was recognizing that. Do you remember in the Racy Tracy Radigan episode, there's a bit where Tracy, he bites like it's a bird call thing and swallows it, and then when he opens his mouth, these bird calls are coming out. Yes. I thought, God, that's so similar.
We get our anthem to Alan Brady, where we're singing the praises of Alan Brady and his name.
One question, David, do you know this?
Yes.
Is there a live orchestra there with them playing with these songs? Are they all like, even when he's making the pitch pipe sound, is it like there's an orchestra on stage that's, playing the kind of sounds that are coming from his mouth? I wonder.
Many of the musical numbers are pre-recorded.
Right. And then they lip sync.
Then they do lip sync. My sense is due to the nature of the stopping and starting. Yes, they were doing this live, and there must have been somebody playing this
a
off
little
stage.
Something, there to accompany it. That makes sense.
Hagen usually had his orchestra there to do play-ons and playoffs and entertain the studio audience. But again, this was a different thing because it was no audience and it was shot over 2 days. I know that Sally's song and Rob and Laura's song were all pre-recorded. There are recordings that are still around of those.
Rob gets done with his monologue and the song starts, and it's a great song for them because it allows each of them to do their thing separately, to kind of shine. And it also allows them to do kind of what they do with I'm Am a Fine Musician, where they're sort of piggybacking on each other and it's sort of, harmonies going on. And I also want to say that I think Sally is singing a tenor part, if I'm not mistaken there.
Well, she's singing certainly in her low range.
When I was in choirs and so forth, I often would sing the highest part of the tenor part. And I like that she did that. I feel like that's cool. She's a really interesting voice, and I love when she does great things with it.
She's down the octave, sort of that Sophie Tucker, deep, strong sound.
Yeah, it's really, really unique. They're basically singing the name Alan Brady over and over again in various melody. They do it once all the way through. Alan Brady, all the way through, and everyone, completes it just fine. And then Rob has a reaction to this. He starts to get kind of emotional when the song's over, like, oh God, it's emotional. And then we do cut back to Alan sitting as Santa with Richie on his lap and the other kids around him. We do that a few times. And here's the first one. I think we see him over on the side, with them all around him.
Again, the original script had a bit more of a part for Alan with the kids than we are treated to in the final version. And Alan is sort of engaged in asking the kids, whose child are you?
That's right. Yeah.
The one kid says, oh, my daddy's a cameraman. And he says, oh, that's fine, Sugar Plum. And he turns and he looks at Richie and he says, and who are you, Sonny? Larry, as Richie, says, well, I'm Richie Petrie. That's my daddy over there. Oh, he's a nice daddy. Richie, what does daddy say about Alan Brady at home? Trying to get the inside scoop. Richie says, well, I don't know. They send me out of the room when they talk about it.
That's great.
The interesting perception here of the kids is this is Santa Claus. This is not Alan Brady.
Yeah, which is also, kind of meta and, like, do they not know it's him? And it's interesting.
Alan, in response to Richie, says, well, isn't that adorable? And then Alan turns to this other child. He says, and who are you, Sugar Plum? And the little boy says, I'm Alan Brady's boy. I'm Alan Jr. And Alan says, of course you are. Of course you are.
That's a good gag,
So it's pretty interesting that Alan doesn't recognize his own little boy there.
You kind of make sense for him if you think about Alan. You're like, he'd be the one. Then they do a second time through the song. And this time they split it into parts. So they're all together, but then Sally and Mel sing a line, then Laura and Buddy sing a line, kind of alternate. And that leaves the ending for each one of them to say Alan's name on their own. And this is where we get the gag. First time ends with Buddy saying his own name. And everyone is highly, he says, Buddy Sorrell, so to Alan Brady. And everyone's like rolling their eyes like, oh my God, you ruined this. Rob goes over to discipline, which I think is the best part.
Yes.
He comes over and kind of silently and sternly just points off stage without a word, and Buddy immediately picks up his music stand, leaves the stage, almost like he was just thinks like his punishment was warranted, he just goes off. And they all kind of share a head shake like, man, oh man, that Buddy. All sort of share a glance.
This was sort of the foreshadowing of it's starting to crumble.
Yeah, it's starting to fall apart.
Rob sort of taps the music stand to bring everybody to attention, and we start again. And
this time we see Sally kind of having a little epiphany while they're singing. Like she's about to make a choice, like, maybe if I just sang my name. So when it stops on her, she sings her name, Sally Rogers. And Rob's even angrier this time. Points at her, and she just goes off stage. It just sort of, again, like sullen. And then Rob has some words to the audience. We'll begin again. I think we get a glance at Alan with the kids again, kind of see them over there. So now we only have two left. We have Laura and we have Mel on the stage still. And now we know, okay, this isn't going to go well. Rob's about to start the fourth way through the song. He starts conducting, Laura, before the song even begins, immediately says her name and just hurries off stage on her own without having to be told. Rob's losing it by this point. He's wincing, grabbing his eyes. He does that great sort of frustrated, like, like he can't stand it. Now we just have Mel. And one of my favorite bits in this whole episode is when everyone else is off stage now, Buddy, Sally, Laura, and it's just Rob and Mel left. And before they start, Mel is sort of glancing off stage, behind his head, like looking like, where'd all my friends go? Like what's back there? And then Rob has to kind of hit the baton, calls him to attention kind of thing. And he comes back. I don't know why. It's just so funny. Such a funny little bit.
It's a great bit by Deacon. Yes.
Yeah.
And then they're getting close to the point, and Rob says, I can trust him. He's Alan Brady's brother-in-law. Right. At which point Deacon, as Mel, blows it again and says, Melvin Cooley. And away he goes.
And by the way, he has a great singing voice. It's so deep. I was like loving it.
Rob, he crumbles along with the rest of them, snaps his baton, and away he goes.
And says, Robert Petrie.
Yes. Great number. We all know it well.
So simple, by the way, for them to learn this. I mean, so simple. And then they can do so much fun with it because it's such a simple format.
But originally, fans, that's not how it ended.
That's right.
It ended with Mel being the last performer left on the stage. And he actually does not betray Brady in the version, stating, I have to say his name because he's my brother-in-law. And a subsequent notation in this early draft of the script indicates there was supposed to be a Mel dance number besides.
Which is awesome. I really want to see that.
Apparently, this was cut. We had seen Mel cut the rug, so to speak, previously at a Petrie home house party and at the bowling alley.
The Twizzle, yeah. That would have been great.
Unless somehow through AI we create this, we'll have to let our imaginations determine what sort of holiday dance routine Mel might have contributed to this episode.
David, we got to do that. Let's put it on the list.
Our minds are so entrenched in how this number ends now to have it end differently.
It works for Mel to betray everyone.
Yes.
He's sort of folds under pressure easy, so I kind of understand that. We go right into the second performance of the show, which is Sally's big number. Rosemary is just a phenomenal singer. I mean, I know she's known as a singer, so that's obvious, but just her low voice, I really vibe with it. Like, it's just kind of taught me as a kid that you could be a woman and have a low voice and still be kind of feminine and beautiful. And I just think she really, and here she is singing about wanting a husband, so it was very feminine, and her clothes were very feminine, but she had this deep voice. And then even as we get to it here, she even does a Jimmy Durante impression, which I think is awesome. She's such an embodiment of like masculine and feminine, like all together. And just what is funny, it's just funny.
And Persky and Denoff, I think, did a really fine job writing to her character.
Yes.
And then, like you said, knowing her past history with Jimmy Durante, worked that into the song.
For listeners, if they don't know, she would do this bit as when she was a child, right? As baby Rosemary, she would do a little Jimmy Durante bit and sort of saunter off stage, like do his walk and things like that. So yeah, I guess they're speaking to that there. But she actually has a couple of references in the show to that. Isn't in the pilot when she does her song.
Yes, I think it was part of her act for most of her career. And she, sometimes would perform with Durante and would do her Durante with him on the stage.
Can you imagine?
Joey said Jimmy taught her how to do him. Rosemary actually did not like this song.
I didn't know that. Oh,
she did not like this song, and I don't know why.
She couldn't tell, though. She did it so well.
She told me that. Part of the other thing that's indicative of that is Earl Hagen donated many of his scores to University of Wyoming and UCLA, but Rosemary had in her archives all of the arrangements of the songs that Earl did for Sally from the Dick Van Dyke Show. So Earl must have given them to her and said, feel free to use these if you want to do them. But among her archives was not Santa Sandafella. Apparently, she said, I don't need that one. I'll take the others, but I don't care about that.
I have a copy of the sheet music for that, which I think you found somewhere.
I have Hagen's score of the orchestration, so cool. But also have the lead sheets that Persky and Denoff wrote. Part of the way this scene opens is her sort of sitting at the desk, sort of writing her Christmas cards, sort of saying out loud what she's writing. Again, we'll treat you fans with a little bit of insights into what was supposed to be part of the script, but somehow got cut out. And it won't surprise you to have Sally saying what she's writing, Dear Aunt Agnes. because she always quoted her Aunt Agnes. She says, "Thank you very much for the gift. It's what I've always wanted, a genuine wash and wear bookmark." Fortunately, Uncle Henry sent me a wash and wear book. Then she moves on. "Dear cousin Martha, thanks very much for your gift. It's what I've always wanted, a hand knitted Afghan with a multicolored replica of the New Jersey Turnpike. As you said, it's just what I need to keep me warm on those cold nights." Then she stops writing. She said, "Sure, I need it like a hole in the head. I also think I'm writing to the wrong person. I think I'll get my request in early for next year." And that's when she starts to write, "Dear Mr. S. Claus, North Pole." And that's actually where it picks up.
Yeah, the whole part of the beginning's not in there. Would have been fun.
So whether it was time constraints that they cut it out or they just thought it was not relevant to the script. But dear Aunt Agnes, I always love the Aunt Agnes.
Yeah,
quotes.
it's like they know the show so well, at that point. The song begins pretty slow and sincerely. She's kind of singing in her normal voice and slow, but then when she gets up and then the band kicks in, boom. And then she starts in her Santa Send a Fellow. And now it's kind of comedic. It starts out very sincere. Now it's just hilarious. Band kicks in. She's up singing a song about how she wants Santa send a fellow. So send me a husband. She's ready to get married. She's looking for him. She'll settle for anything as long as he's breathing. Just let's send him my way. And, she never really dances, I realized, too, in this. She does a little bit of hand things, but she doesn't really have much. And I realized, Rosemary, she doesn't dance much in her numbers. Yeah. It must not be in her background.
You talked about the lines. As long as he's still breathing, he passes the test.
It's so great.
That's a great line by Persky and Denoff. Bill shared with us that in his collaboration with Sam was usually the guy who wrote the music, and Bill was usually the guy that wrote the lyrics. He said, "I was the rhymer." Collectively, they put together some great original musical pieces for this cast to perform for this episode.
Great duo together. Her song is fun. She does the Jimmy Durante bit. She looks beautiful. She's got not a blue kind of velvet dress on, just gorgeous. The set's really pretty. And then, hers ends. It's very fun. Orchestra, big ending,
Let me just tell you that the dress actually was black. I do have a rare color still of her performing the numbers.
Yeah, she looks lovely. The next number isn't just musical. It's a bit with Buddy. It's her, Sally, and Buddy are going to have kind of a comedic skit together. Giant box on wheels comes rolling out from the back of the stage.
Sort of in response to her plea for a Santa send me a fella.
Yep. Big package comes out, got a big bow on it. Sleigh girls are bringing it out. And they also have a giant pair of scissors, which I think is super fun. Because I always look at the props in these shows and I remember they had to make these things. There's no 3D printing. There's no, it's like somebody made that thing probably out of cardboard. Really cool to look at. And then we get another Jerry Paris voiceover, don't we?
Package for Miss Sally Rogers.
She goes, "Oh, good. I ordered a fella."
What are you calling the ladies that are dressed up?
I'm calling them sleigh girls. Maybe they're reindeer.
Reindeer girl? I don't know.
Yeah. I've been calling them sleigh girls, but now I don't really know why. I guess because they pulled the sleigh out in the beginning. Just more of Santa's girls, I guess. And then Sally takes the giant fake scissors and pretends to cut the box open, and all the sides fall down. And who's inside?
Buddy.
Which is awesome.
Buddy and his cello.
Yep. Now, I have something in the original script here. I'll read this. This is a bit that I had down, which I thought was funny. So in reality, he says, who'd you expect, that kind of thing. But this is in the original script. He says, "Who'd you expect on such short notice? Rock Hudson? Well, folks, here I am, Buddy Sorrell. Have cello will travel. When you hear me play, you'll want me to. Before I joined the Alan Brady Show as a comedy writer, I was a comedian. In fact, before I started writing for this show, Alan Brady was a comedian. In preparation for tonight, I went through all my jokes and routines and decided the best gift I could give you all was not to do any of them. Instead, the Alan Brady Show is proud to present a television last, Buddy Sorrell and his charming cello." So much of the script was not in there. So much.
Yes.
This is fascinating.
He was supposed to actually play a serious cello number.
Yeah, kind of like other episodes where he does this sort of Hungarian folk song, things like that, which he always does well, which would have been wonderful.
Well, he was a trained cellist for sure, but somehow it morphed into the little bit routine where he's attempting to play something on the cello and Rosemary just can't help herself and has to be part of his act.
Which I'm glad about, because I always say if there's any duo in sitcom history I love no more than those two. It's a weird match because if you just saw them side by side, you'd be like, okay, they're like not that close in age and they have a totally different demeanor, but like it is the perfect union of comedy. They really play off each other so well. And this is I think is a highlight because there's nobody else in the scene. It's just the two of them.
And I think that's attributed partially to the fact that they were such close friends in real
Dear
life.
friends, which is so wonderful. I think until Maury's passing, I mean, I think they were always good friends.
Going back to when the box initially opens, I love the line that Sally says as we see that it's Buddy. I guess I should have been more specific.
Such a great one. That prompts him to say, what'd you expect?
Buddy attempts to play a song. Sally continues to interrupt. They finally come to an agreement that Buddy's going to play Jingle Bells. And Sally says, well, I don't know that. And Buddy sort of has that fiendish grin on his face, like I finally come across a song that she doesn't know how to play. So he just very graciously starts and plays about 3 or 4 measures of the song. And with that, Sally jumps right back in on the piano and starts playing and playing. And Buddy's like, what are you doing? To which Sally says, I didn't know that was Jingle Bells.
And there's a bit before that, which is also hilarious. My favorite part, which is she says, you won't even hear me. I'll accompany you. You won't even hear me. I'm not even here. And so she kind of, plays silently. And he goes, okay, whatever. And she starts accompanying with random chords, playing along really loud. And he's tapping on the piano like, hey, cut it out. She doesn't hear him. He just takes off his shoe, just lobs it over the piano. It falls right on her keys, right on the floor. He's just so deadpan. And he goes, next time my foot.
Yeah, he started off with the cello bow.
Yeah, that's right.
Went to the shoe, and then next time my foot. Although we have hints of what it could have been, I'm happy that we ended up with the way that it was because I do think it gave us an opportunity to really enjoy Buddy and Sally or Rosemary and Maury.
Well, there's real love between them, and you can always see that. I think that's very heartwarming for a Christmas episode too. So now we're about halfway through the episode, and we're going on to the Santa number, which is Rob and Laura's number, which I guess is called Everything But You. I'm imagining that's what the song is called.
I Have Everything But You, again, written by Persky and Denoff.
Great song. Great song. Reminds me of, You Wonderful You, kind of in a way, similar sentiments. So it's Rob and Laura in the Santa costume. So I guess you don't really know it's Laura at first. Maybe you could assume, but there's 2 Santas in these costumes and they're bell ringers on the street. And we see people going by, dropping change in the chimneys and in their little cardboard chimneys they're dropping change in. And this is where we see Abdullah. He comes through, one of the people. Some other people I didn't recognize, some other extras.
Extra, but I think a familiar extra, one of the younger guys that you see in a number of other episodes.
And Rob's very ho, 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 ho. He's got a lot of shtick going on there. But the other Santa, who turns out to be Laura, is dead quiet, not saying anything. It's funny, I had here, David, surprised Frank wasn't in the scene. We just talked about that earlier. So we don't know right away it's Laura, but, Rob decides, hey, you're not doing too good over there. Nobody's put change in her chimney. You're not doing too good over there. I think it's because you're not ho-hoing enough. And so she lets out her ho-ho, and that's when we learn it's Laura, her very feminine ho-ho-ho.
And he says, oh, you're a female Santa Claus. Again, a line that's missing was, well, what are you doing here? And she says, I was filling in for my father who got sick. So that line got lost in the translation. Should stop here just to point out that the costumes and the dance number that they did were done by none other than Sylvia Lewis.
Beautiful.
Sylvia was involved not only with this number, but also choreographing I Am a Fine Musician as the final number for the show.
I didn't know that. That is wonderful.
I was in touch with Sylvia just recently and asked if she knew any of the other sleigh girls or reindeer girls, however we're going to refer to them. She did remember one of the ladies. She recognized one of the blondes in the opening scene with Alan around the sleigh. And she was a dancer by the name of Kay Capscott. And Sylvia said, let me see if I can get the cobwebs out of the brain and I'll see if I can remember some of the other folks. I think fun for her to sort of go back and revisit that episode that she had so much fun with, the big costumes that Dick and Mary wore.
I'd like the Santa hoop kind of thing. Oh, it's so fun.
Yes.
Makes for some great comedy, which we'll see as we go through it. Laura finds out that Rob is a young Santa. She says, yeah, you sound a little young yourself there, and pulls off his beard and he's, does his dashing look. The song is all about how he's this sort of guy that's got everything, riches beyond compare, except for this girl here. Laura sort of sits by and interjects for a lot of the first part of the song, kind of musical theatery, kind of sort of, little quips throughout the song. Oh, I'll bet, kind of stuff. Rob sings most of the beginning of the song, and then he even does a Stan Laurel impression, which we were talking about with Sally and the Jimmy Durante. They knew Rob so well, like, well, we got to put that in there.
Yep.
And then it turns into a dance number between the two of them. He says something about Astaire and Kelly, something, and then they both start dancing. And again, they use those costumes as this wonderful prop to, they pretend like sort of the costumes like a bell and like they're ringing, or they pull it up and, move it around. It makes for a lot of fun stuff.
Great dance number from the two of them.
And Rob does a great trip in there where he trips over his own foot. And I'm always marvel at that. Like, he's so good at those pratfall type things, and just really fun.
It does make you wonder how much time they really had to put this whole number together.
Yeah.
And talking with them through the years, they didn't really have a lot of time. I mean, they were maybe for this Christmas episode, because it was truly a production sort of show, they had a little bit more time.
Yeah.
But generally, the other numbers that they sang in other shows, they didn't have a lot of time to really rehearse the songs and the dance routines that they did.
I believe it.
We mentioned that this episode was filmed just before the Kennedy assassination.
Oh, this is really fascinating, listeners. You're going to enjoy this.
Near the end of this song, there was a line written by Persky and Danoff that Laura sings that says, "You got a voice like Louis Armstrong and you act like John Wilkes Booth." Well, given the fact that John Wilkes Booth had assassinated President Lincoln, they thought that was in very poor taste. So they decided that they had to change that to something else, right? Mm-hmm. So they ended up changing it to, "and your actions are uncouth."
Which, wow, way to find something that rhymes with Booth. I mean, that's a lot.
Fans, go back and take a look at the episode. And if you just watch the video, turn down what you hear. You can see her say the words, "and you act like John Wilkes Booth."
Yeah, like she's still mouthing them.
That's how it was originally recorded. And they had to go back in and overdub that after the assassination, before the show aired.
I think it's very cool when we see pieces like that where history sort of, you can see real life going alongside of the show, and just like, oh yeah, this was a real timely show at the time, and because for me and you, we experienced it, quite after the fact that the show was around, so it's interesting to realize like people were tuning into this show that week, and they would have to make adjustments for that. I think that's so neat.
They did change the line. Originally was, Laura said, "You got a voice like Louis Armstrong." Originally, that was, "You got a voice like James Durante." Having just used that in the other song, I bet they opted to change it so that they had some variety.
And then, of course, the song ends how a lot of 60 songs ends, where someone proposes immediately. And then they get married and all's well. But they do a cute little dance off. It's very sweet.
At the conclusion of the number, we see them dance down the street, sort of to applause. Originally, in the filmed version that we know, we cut right to Richie starting "The Little Drummer Boy." Mm-hmm. But in the original version, there was cues in the script that said, "As they exit and applause is fading, we hear the vamp of the little drummer boy in the background." And it gradually comes up as Richie starts a slow, ambling, hands in pocket walk from upstage, where Rob and Laura have just exited. Yeah. We didn't have this at all. Mm-hmm. As he walks down, the stage music is brought up and we hear the group. Richie starts to sing as he walks down, and on cue,
Sally, Buddy, Mel, Rob, and Laura falling behind him to sing the song. I could not believe that when I read that.
Exactly. And as the song is ending, we pan to a shot of Alan sitting with the kids, who are still seated next to him on the stage, on this throne. They too are singing background of "The Little Drummer Boy" as the last chords are sung. And Alan was supposed to turn to the camera and say, "Happy holiday, everybody."
I mean, so different. So different.
Yes.
So what we have in the real one is that basically an image of Richie dressed as a drummer boy kind of superimposed over like a stained glass of like, the Jesus manger scene. And he doesn't move. It's just him singing the song like that, kind of from the waist up. And the picture doesn't change. There's no one else singing with him. There's no background singers. It's just that one shot. And we don't see him get into the shot. It just, like you said, it just sort of fades into, and we see him already there.
So you wonder, did the other thing originally occur and they had to change it at the last minute? We will never know, probably.
I don't know. I think it's very effective, though. Whether you're a Christ affiliated person or not, or, a follower of Christmas or whatever, it doesn't matter. The song is beautiful. When I was a kid, the performance of this song by Larry, it always made me cry, and it still does today. If I hear even the first measure of that song, I tear up. I would love to know what Larry remembers about that. And also, there's a point where it looks like he almost has a tear in his own eye towards the end of the song. And I always think, like, man, was he getting choked up too?
Larry does share that he remembers that he had a very challenging time recording this song live with the orchestra in the recording studio. He said they must have had 15 or more takes. He just couldn't do it. Finally, he said he achieved success by listening through the headphones and singing separately with the recorded track of the orchestra, but not doing it with them live.
I mean, that would be daunting for an adult, like, whoa.
It was not a short song by any means.
It's such a little pause in the show where you just get to kind of sit in the beauty of Christmas and just the heartwarming feel of the show. The sincereness that I think the Dick Van Dyke Show has. That's kind of where, yeah, we're funny, we have lots of gags, but like we understand love and the important things kind of stuff. So I really like that pause that they take in there. It's just beautiful. Like I said, I always tear up when I hear it. Maybe his tears were listening to the recording and remembering how hard it was to record.
We finished The Little Drummer Boy, and all of a sudden we hear the fanfare music of I Am a Fine Musician. Maybe fanfare's not the right word, but pause for a minute. And instead of having our 4 little toy soldiers come out on stage, imagine a dark stage and all of a sudden a solo spot, and it's on Rob. He's not in a costume. He's just sitting there with a single spot.
Playing the guitar.
Yes. So the original ending to the Christmas episode was supposed to be Rob singing a Christmas folk song while he played the guitar.
Sitting on a stool with a spotlight.
How different would this episode have been? Because of all the numbers, if you talk about the Van Dyke Christmas show, I Am a Fine Musician.
That's the standout. Everyone remembers that one.
I have personally seen any number of recreations of this number online.
And you can actually go and watch Dick Van Dyke and the Fantastics, which is his a cappella group. There's a video of them on YouTube where they sing the song themselves, each doing a part.
Now, this was a German folk song that they pulled out. Actually, this was used in early 50s television, and folks can also find early iterations of it on YouTube too. Subtly different iterations, not the toy soldier costume. So I think, Sylvia's idea to introduce them as toy soldiers, since it was the Christmas episode, right?
It's fantastic.
We have them sort of unseen behind, I think it's the same box that Buddy popped out of earlier.
Oh, funny. I bet it is. I didn't notice that.
And of course, this was a redo of the number because it was originally used back in the Sam Pomerantz scandals.
In season 2.
What an invigoration of this number.
And you'll be delighted today if you go on YouTube. There's like high schoolers still doing the song for like competitions and stuff. It was just like so delightful to see like, oh, they're still loving this song. Like, that's so great. I love it.
Thank you, Sylvia, for coming up with the costumes.
I mean, Buddy's is hilarious. Like the way he's wearing his chin strap, like it's so funny.
Yeah.
Like it's just how it's placed, just hysterical.
You mentioned Dick singing it with the Fantastics. I was lucky enough to be at Dick's house one afternoon when the Fantastics were there and they were rehearsing, and around Dick's dining room table.
That's amazing.
They did it for me, which was a real treat.
Well, I also do like that all the instruments seem to match the person performing it. Like Buddy's is a tuba, which kind of makes sense. And Rob's kind of the lanky trombone. Laura's piccolo. Sally, even her voice, trumpet. I mean, she's a very like that kind of tone. So I made a lot of sense.
The number ends to rousing applause from, I guess, the
studio audience, quote unquote. Yeah.
The sound effects track of the audience. And then it's sort of this weird moment of ending.
So we're supposed to be watching Rob Petrie, the cast of the Alan Brady Show. We're in that world. And then when the entire cast comes out on the stage of the Alan Brady Show, Alan with the Santa suit and the sleigh girls and all of that, they start to sing a few measures of the Dick Van Dyke Show theme song, which is like totally blurring the line of like, are we there? Are we outside of it? Do they know that they're in a show? Like, it's weird, it's just very, very interesting. I love that they play with that though, because you kind of got, like you were saying before, that family feel of like, well, you guys are you're kind of part of this, the show within the show and everything. It's just such a fun holiday moment to be like, oh, okay, they're in on it with us.
It's fun to see, as you said, Carl as Santa in the sleigh, Richie's in the sleigh, Cornell Choulet also joins them in the sleigh. The sleigh girls are pushing the sleigh out, and they seem like they have a lot of fun with the whoop boom
when they get to that.
When they get to that spot. It just seems to demonstrate the collegial family sort of fun that they all had in doing this.
It's a novel episode. Like I said, I don't know of any other Christmas episodes like this that are just kind of like performances, numbers back and forth. And it's not a phone it in Christmas episode where you're sort of rehashing the Christmas Carol or something. It's really its own unique kind of novel thing. And I just think that's why it's such a fan favorite.
I actually think with the singing of the theme by the sleigh at the very end, I think Hagen actually get paid 3 times for his theme in this episode, because we had the opening credits and the usual ending credits, but we have a third iteration with them singing the song, which Earl should get paid for in a performance royalty too.
That's interesting.
This was quite a festive ending to a performance-laden episode, and one that still continues to entertain and resonate with fans, some 60 years after the original airing.
Now, I would have also liked to have seen that Petri Christmas episode, though, where Millie and Jerry and Buddy and Sally and Mel, they're all at the house together opening presents. That's still something in my head. I'm like, that would be really fun, too. But like I said, this is special.
Maybe through AI, we'll have that someday, too, Abby. Who knows?
Right? Going on the list.
We certainly hope you have enjoyed today's look and a recollection of the Alan Brady Show Presents. But before we sign off today, we have a special message from a very special guy.
This is Dick Van Dyke, and I would like to wish you and all those dear to you a blessed holiday.
Dick Van Dyke, the original Jolly Holiday. Now, we also have a special holiday prize for one lucky podcast listener.
We're going to give away a color 8x10 print of the Alan Brady Show poster that was seen outside the television studio in the 44 Tickets episode. We mentioned that earlier in the show, where it had, the Alan Brady Show Presents and the time for arrival of guests and the time that the show aired. Cool. So we'd like to make that available to one fan of our podcast.
And in order to qualify for what will be a random drawing, just send an email to trippingovertheottoman@gmail.com. And make sure to have a subject line of Merry Uniumphs and tell us what your favorite part of this podcast was.
We'd like to have your emails received by 12 midnight on Christmas Eve to be eligible for the drawing. So before you're watching the rerun of this episode around the holidays, get your emails in. One entry will be selected at random to win the prize, and we'll be sending out the print sometime in early January.
Yep. So hurry up and send those emails off to us and get in the holiday spirit. And make sure to subscribe to our channel so you get notified when new episodes are available. And remember, we're also available on all the major podcast streaming platforms now.
So Merry Uniumphs, or happy holidays to all of you. For now, I'm David.
And I'm Abby. And this completes season 1 of our podcast. Season 2 will start soon into the new year. And as always, thanks for tripping over the Ottoman with us. We'll see you next time.